country thriving from investments made in innovative opportunities and exports demanded globally. We have a vision now within our grasp where Jamaica becomes the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We will not let go of this vision. We will grow. We will overcome these challenging times and look to the future with hope and positivity. These are special times. The world as we know it has changed, but home will always be in our hearts. And in Jamaica, you can always find a home. Think you know Jamaica? Look again. You will be surprised.
Tell me something. How much time you ever hear the government announce a project and wonder why they must spend millions on this and not on that? Well, if you think there's nothing you can do about how your money is spent, think again. Jamaica's budget is more than just numbers. It reveals our biggest problems and goals, our plans to fix them, and what to prioritize. We can even call it a promise book of what will be done to improve our lives. Now, let's talk about the 4 stages of the budget cycle so we can understand how it works and get involved. Stage 1, planning and review. The Ministry of Finance sends out a budget call to every ministry, which outlines the priorities and constraints to guide how those ministries prepare their budget. After ministries submit their drafts, the Finance Ministry reviews, compiles, and sends them to cabinets for review and approval. Stage 2, parliamentary debate and approval. The Finance Minister tables all budget documents in the House of Representatives. The Standing Finance Committee, which is all 63 MPs, sits to examine the budget documents, and each minister presents their budget and answers concerns the committee has. The committee's report is then tabled in the House, followed by the estimated expenditure, which is tabled as legislation called the Appropriations Bill. That's right, the budget of Jamaica is law. The budget debate formally opens. We have presentations from the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, and the Shadow Finance Minister. After their presentations, our MPs vote for or against approval. Like all legislation, it goes to the Senate for their approval and then to the Governor General for his royal assent. No later than March 31st, end of the financial year. Stage 3, implementation. The new financial year begins and approved budgets are sent to ministries. Collecting taxes, borrowing loans, and receiving grants begin. And so does the spending. Stage 4, budget oversight. Now, this is where citizens don't need permission to get involved. Throughout the year, operations and spending are assessed by internal auditors and the Auditor General's department that makes sure public entities are compliant with laws and that their financial reports are accurate. All Auditor General reports are submitted to our Parliament's Public Accounts Committee for review and cross-examination of public officials. The Ministry of Finance, Integrity Commission, and MOCA also monitor government spending to guard against poor financial management and corruption. It is our job to review these reports, check the findings in the newspaper, and look up if breaches are fixed at jampja.org. If not, ask your MP what he or she has done to ensure public officials are held to account. No more 9-day wonders. So, did the government follow through on their spending and investment promises last year? What promises will next year's budget have? How will they affect you, and how can you ensure that you get what is promised? For access to the national budget, check out JAM's easy digital version and contact info for your MP at jampja.org. Then link your MP and see what progress is being made throughout the entire budget cycle. Support JAMP. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Get involved to fight climate change. Come make we engage to fight climate change. Get involved. Too much carbon dioxide a release a contribute to climate change. Severe weather and strong hurricane. That is a rainfall and it place turn river like jokes. And it make it it's a hotter. We have to use up the sun, the wind and rivers to get cheaper and better energy. Plant more trees, preserve the forest, practice proper disposal of garbage. European Union and Jamaica are partnering for a sustainable future.
Latin America and the Caribbean recorded progress in reducing hunger and food insecurity compared to other regions of the world, according to the latest estimates presented by the Food and Agriculture Organization. However, the scenario continues to be worrisome, with 43.2 million people suffering from hunger. The reasons are multiple: poverty, climate change, the socio-economic consequences of the pandemic, and conflicts, among other factors, continue to affect the most vulnerable. It is time to move from commitment to action. In March 2024, the 38th FAO Regional Conference for Latin America and the Caribbean will be held in Georgetown, Guyana. For 3 days, heads of state and government, ministers, parliamentarians, representatives of civil society and the private sector from FAO's 33 member countries in Latin America and the Caribbean will meet to address regional priorities, translated into FAO's mandate as an objective, clear, and realistic response to combat hunger in the region. Multiple actors from across the region have forged synergies to contribute to national efforts towards more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems, and support the 2030 agenda promoting better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life. We can create a new reality and build a Latin America and the Caribbean free of poverty, hunger, and inequality, leaving no one behind.
What if they knew that you abused her? Her family?
Mr. Jones.
And your colleagues, how will they look at an abuser? When the law comes knocking, you'll have nowhere to run.
Mr. Brown, you're under arrest. Please get up, hands behind your head and interlock your fingers.
Turn your back on abusers. Report gender-based violence to the police. There's no excuse for abuse. Call the Bureau of Gender Affairs at 876-754-8577.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican.
We are Jamaican.
And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition Leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money. the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
We work to make communities safer by essentially looking at the structures in the community that contribute greatest to social capital building. Try to reinforce, build, and establish those structures in a way that the community can sustain their own safety and own their own peace. When we say, for instance, we're doing a zinc fence removal program, what we're really doing is improving the line of sight. If you're on the street and you can see better what is behind the fences, then as you walk along the street or children play on, etc., you're able to contribute to crime prevention. We believe, in terms of our mandate and our responsibility, that by making communities safer, we can make Jamaica safer.
Let us resolve our family disputes peacefully. A family is a circle of love, support, and strength. Violence has no place.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
The National Family Planning Board now presents a parenting tip from Nelson Mandela. History will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of children.
Mommy?
Yes, Zoe?
Can we read this book? It will only take 10 minutes.
Sure, sit down. Every spring, Madame Angel will arrange a...
You have 10 minutes. Read with your child today. Reading with your children for just 10 minutes each day helps develop their language and listening skills, stimulates their imagination, and expands their understanding of the world. So, start reading with your child today.
What can a little germs do?
Pink eye running belly, even flu. Germs can make them happen to you.
Put germs and manners with these. Cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. Always wash your hand with water and soap. Keep dirty hands from your eyes and your nose and your mouth. You don't want to be sick, take care. Practice every day, no germs around here. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Here's how we find the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sign with me?
Do not use your cell phone while driving, please. That call or text can wait. Do you really have to stream that video while driving? It's not worth your life, nor that of other road users. Stay alert, stay off your phone, and arrive alive.
Do you wish there were a way your community could get funding to improve a school, health center, sports program, and more? There is! It's the Constituency Development Fund. Here are a few things you probably didn't know about the CDF and how you can make it work better for you. The CDF policy promotes citizen participation in community development and the protection of taxpayers' funds. It outlines that MPs are to meet with citizens at least once every 2 years to agree on the projects needed. You know, it used to be once a year? We should really go back to that. Projects developed without community consultation are not to be approved by the bipartisan CDF Parliamentary Committee. There are 26 government agencies that implement projects, usually for a small fee. Funds are provided directly from the Office of the Prime Minister to the implementing agency, not through the Member of Parliament. The CDF unit monitors project costs and implementation. So if you have questions about how the CDF are run in your community, contact them. To ensure no one project or community gets all the funds, there are 6 project categories with spending limits for each. There must be no less than 5 and no more than 20 projects each year. To learn more, visit jampja.org to view your MP's CDF info and tell them how this fund has impacted you. If you don't see your MP's CDF reports, then put them under a little pressure, man. Call, tweet, email. Ask them when they'll submit it and when is the next CDF meeting. Change is possible. It's already happening. What we need is you. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Tourism debates are on, and PBCJ is the place to watch them. See students from schools all across the island match wits and tackle complex issues affecting our nation. Watch as future leaders and thinkers solve problems with innovative arguments. Tune in on Mondays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. with a repeat on Saturdays from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Watch the National Tourism Debates on PBCJ, the People's Station.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican.
We are Jamaican.
And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
The Speaker Upper.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine outwardly servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thine heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be the glory of our blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. Members, let me first apologize for the later than usual start. I would like to say first and foremost that this Honorable House resumes its sitting for today, Thursday, March 21st, 2024, particularly for the continuation of the budget debate. I would like to extend special welcome first to the mother of the Prime Minister, who is seated in the gallery. Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Audrey Sewell. Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Ambassador Rocky Mead. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Mrs. Arlene Williams. The many members of the Diplomatic Corps are seated in the gallery. Our own President of the Senate and other members of the Senate. To those who continue to join us online via the various social media platforms, and particularly PBCJ live stream, welcome to the Parliament. To all the guests seated in the gallery, welcome. Welcome to the Houses of Representatives. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark? Here. Mr. Bartlett? Mr. Holness? Here. Dr. Clark? Present. Dr. Chang? Present. Ms. Grange? Here. Present. Mrs. Williams? Mrs. Malawu Fort? Dr. Tufton? Here. Mr. McKenzie? Here. Mr. Chuck? Mr. Vybz, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, here. Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Taradong, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
Thank you. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers. House Leader, I'm rushing along, I'm sure, because of all late start.
Madam Speaker,
Clark, could you please turn your mic
We'd
off?
like to join you in welcoming the mother of our Prime Minister here to welcome. to welcome members from the other place, the higher place that are here, the Senate, that is the other chamber, President of the Senate, and the ministers who are from the Senate, as well as senators, permanent secretaries, members of the diplomatic corps, and of course, other invited guests who are in the gallery. Today promises to be a very momentous day for all of Jamaica, and definitely for this honorable house. Madam Speaker, the agenda as is put forward will flow as per stated. And the sole item today will be the contribution of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, to the appropriations budget. In that context, Madam Speaker, I invite you to proceed with the matters of business.
Thank you, House Leader. Statement by ministers, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motion for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. House Leader, I would like to go directly to public business as it relates to the budget, and if there are, in fact, any documents additionally to be tabled, then we will recommit announcements as required. Thank you, House Leader.
I concur fully with that procedural approach, and may I invite you to ask the Prime Minister to make his contribution at this time.
Let us make welcome to his feet our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Minister of Defense, Minister of Defense and Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, honorable members, senators and former members seated in the well, excellencies in the diplomatic corps, Jamaicans here and in the diaspora, listening, watching, and following on various social media platforms, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, I thank the Almighty God for sparing us to see another day. We rejoice and we are glad in it. We give thanks for His countless blessings in our lives individually and on Jamaica as a collective. I want to thank my family for their love and support. Every time. In particular, Juliet. An independent woman. A self-made woman. Who has achieved all that she has on her own effort in her own right. Like my mother, who is here as well. They know struggle. Yes. They know sacrifice. Yes. They know hard work. Yes. And they know achievement. Yes. I want to thank my colleagues in cabinet, our parliamentary caucus, our party members, and especially the people of West Central St. Andrew for their steadfast and loyal support. I want to thank my personal staff and advisors for their tireless work. I want to thank the hard-working public sector workers. I want to make special mention of our board members who give voluntary service to oversee the governance of public entities. They are indeed greatly responsible for the achievements of the government, and I want to especially thank them for their service. I want to thank my security detail. Let me say they work just as hard as I do. I also want to acknowledge all the people who follow and engage me on social media. I read some of your messages. I must tell you directly I do. And I appreciate your support, your feedback, your critique and criticism. You know, there's one gentleman called Papa Nana. And there are many others, but I'll just call his name because he was very vocal in saying, I want to talk to the Prime Minister to alert me to the things that concerned him in the country. And I think Papa Nana may be very well here with us today in the gallery. Representing all the people who give critical support to the policies of the government. Again, I want to thank them for their encouragement and their support. I say to you, keep on support, keep on making your critiques and your comments. I do appreciate them. It means a lot, and it makes me stronger. Madam Speaker, there is no challenge that faces Jamaica that God has not endowed us with the strength and wisdom to overcome. Just look at what we have achieved. We have had 10 consecutive quarters of economic growth since the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, we had 20 consecutive quarters of economic growth. This is the longest unbroken period of economic expansion in the history of Jamaica. More Jamaicans have work today than any other time since independence. Unemployment is at a record low of 4.2%. And since 2016, 156,000 new jobs have been created. No other government has created that many jobs. Our national debt as a percentage of GDP is the lowest in 30 years. Just over a decade ago, it was the highest level in our history. All three major rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, have upgraded their ratings to the highest levels in our history. 2 weeks ago, Fitch stated that robust fiscal management has contributed to a turnaround in creditworthiness following the 2013 distressed debt exchange that Fitch considered a default. Fitch went on to say that this represents the third largest decline in debt burden among all rated sovereigns over this period. Only Ireland and Iceland experienced a larger decline. There is no developing country that has achieved our rate of debt burden reduction over the last decade than what Jamaica has done. Jamaica is viewed as a shining star in this regard. Madam Speaker, there is an additional statistic not often spoken about, but which fills me with great optimism for the future. For the last fiscal year, 2022-2023, Jamaica recorded a balance of payment surplus on our current account of US $352.4 million. The last time that Jamaica had a current account surplus was in 1966. What this means is that for the first time since 1966, our exports plus net remittances exceeded imports. This is a good sign that we are heading in a sustainable direction of increasing exports relative to imports. For the period January to October 2023, Statin reported a 16.9% increase compared to 2022. So we're continuing the growth in our balance of payment. We have created a stable and robust macroeconomic environment of fiscal certainty, which supports employment and income generation, capital investment, and increased economic activity. This has allowed my administration, the Andrew Holness-led administration, to present 9 consecutive budgets with no net new taxes. More than that, my administration has actively reduced the tax burden on the people of the country. My administration has actively reduced the tax burden on the people of the country. In the 2016-2017 budget, we announced an increase in the income tax threshold from $592,800 to $1,272 effective July 1, 2016, and from $1,272 to $1.5 million effective April 1, 2017. We did that. That's the largest ever reduction in the tax burden, right across the board. In the 2019-2020 budget, we increased the turnover threshold required for registration to pay general consumption tax. And we did that. We increased from $3 million to $10 million. Significant relief. We reduced the rate of transfer tax on property from 5% to 2% and replaced the ad valorem stamp duty with a flat rate of $5,000 per document. You think we did done? We increased the minimum estate value on which transfer tax is levied on a deceased person's estate from $100,000 to $10 million. We abolished the asset tax payable by non-financial institutions We abolished the minimum business tax of $60,000 per annum. In the 2020 to 2021 budget, we reduced GCT from 16.5% to 15%. A massive reduction. Facts. We reduced the rate of asset tax on financial institutions from 0.25% to 0.125%. In 2020-21 to the 2022 budget, we removed the custom administration fee, the CAF, on export declarations with an export value of less than $500. And in this budget, we have again increased the income tax threshold from 1.5 million to 1.7 million and increased the pension relief and aid relief from $80,000 each to $250,000. We also increased the de minimis value of imported goods for custom purposes from US $50 to US $100, and the duty-free allowance for inbound passengers from $500 to $1,000 US. For a long time, in this country, the population approached the budget season with dread and trepidation, wondering what additional taxes the government is going to impose on them. Madam Speaker, we have completely changed that. Now we are approaching a budget. The question is being asked, what goodies the government is going to announce? That is a massive change. There is no fear of the budget. The budget is filled with great expectations. This is a profound change. Workers, families, small businesses, investors can plan their affairs and think long-term without worrying that the government will impose some random tax to mash up their plans. Government is no longer a burden on the people of Jamaica. It puzzles. It is a puzzle to the opposition how a government can eliminate some taxes completely, relieve a significant number of persons from paying taxes, reduce the tax rate itself, and still have more tax revenue collected. It's a mystery to them, Madam Speaker, a mystery. They don't understand it. They don't understand it. So I understand when they come and say, you know, they've never done it. They have now resorted to spreading an outright lie. That the government has increased taxes in order to explain what they don't understand, or are too ashamed to admit that their government has never been able to do this. Cannot admit that more Jamaicans are employed now than at any other time in the country's history. So more Jamaicans have income and purchasing power. The new hotels that have been built, the new BPOs that have been constructed, the new real estate projects that are being constructed, the new small businesses that have opened up, all have been contributing to the tax revenue. Moreover, wage levels have increased, and more persons are seeing the benefit of joining the formal economy by being compliant and contributing to the tax pool. The government, in turn, takes these tax revenues and returns it to the citizens in ways that increase the quality of life. We have increased public sector wages. We have increased expenditure on national security, health, education, water, pensions, and social security. Moreover, we have used your taxes to bring down debt servicing, which creates more room to spend on the things that matter. I can understand why the opposition would continue to lie about taxes. They have never been in the position, quite frankly, they don't know how to get to this position of financing their budget mainly from tax revenues without borrowing or putting on new taxes. They have no clue. And this is why we say that it is always better for the Jamaica Labour Party to manage the economy of the country. The debate has now moved on to how the dividends of good stewardship of the economy should be spent. Yes. That's where the debate is at now. They will never come and tell you how they will earn the revenue. What they will come and tell you is how to spend the revenue. There have been many decades of neglect and disinvestment in our people and our infrastructure, which makes the competition for expenditure, attention, and benefits intense and agitated, especially when it coincides with the political cycle or the election cycle. Everything is a priority now. Yes. In such an environment of expectation and frustration, it is easy for the opposition to make wild promises without considering cost, to want to spend the dividend of skillful stewardship of the economy that they did not create, to play upon the emotions of people and abandon reasonableness and fiscal prudence. That is what they want to do. The pressures to run with it are not limited to opposition parties. Internally, governments face the same pressures. In fact, even more. They face sometimes angry constituents who, at the point of their frustration with bad roads, lack of water, garbage piling up, don't want to hear about maintaining fiscal discipline, reducing debt to GDP, complying with procurement rules, or the improved ratings from Fitch. True. They put pressure on MPs. No road, no vote. That's the reality. On this side and on that side, we face it. The pressure that existed in 2002 when the then finance minister made his now infamous statement of run with it, are the same pressures that exist today. Absolutely. In other words, the problems that we face didn't start in 2016. They have always been around. Yes. So the conversation which would want to make it seem as if problems have just started, it is unreasonable, it is unfair, indeed mischievous, and hypocritical. What should be clear to constituents and electors and to politicians is that the fundamental problem of a weak economy and slow government bureaucracy is not solved by running with it. If anything, it makes the problem worse. Because they ran with it then.
Yes, and where did it get us?
And we are back here, where we now have to take the problem and take a different approach to solving it. 22 years later, what is different? Today, you have a responsible government who have been good stewards of your affairs. Today, you have a government who is not only interested in power, but is truly interested in people. You have a government who will face the electorate
Tell them the truth.
with the truth about our difficult circumstances. I can stand up here and tell you that I have never been afraid to face the public and tell them the truth.
Absolutely.
I am the only one to have done it.
Yes.
So the people know that when I speak, there is no sugarcoating on it. You're going to get the facts. You're going to get it as it is. You're not going to hear any sweet words.
Yes.
You're going to get it as it is. You know why I do that? I do that because I respect you.
Yes.
Yes, I respect your ability to understand the situation, unlike the Sampai opposition who tries to twist the narrative because they belittle your understanding.
Deception.
Today, Madam Speaker, you have a government who creates wealth and well-being. You have a government, Madam Speaker, that balances lives and livelihood. But I know you will like this one. You have a government that balances work and wages.
Yes.
What is different today, Madam Speaker, is that we have a government that will resist the temptation for reckless policy decisions. Madam Speaker, we have a government that creates the cash it uses to care. Today, we have a government that creates the cash it uses to care. Not a government that borrows the cash to care. Not a government that put on new taxes to show they care. No. That is something that the opposition will never be able to do. It's not in their DNA. They cannot do it. This is high science for them. But hear what, Madam Speaker. Hear this one now. We have a government that truly puts people first. Madam Speaker, the campaign for the recent local government elections was an opportunity for constituents and electors across the length and breadth of the country to express their frustrations, agitations, and grievances. There were two clear, consistent messages from the people. The first message was that while most constituents appreciated to varying extent the importance of macroeconomic growth and stability, They want to see the macroeconomic success translated into meaningful benefits at the micro level in their households and communities. They are happy to see the highways being built, but they want to see the road to their community fixed. And that is a fact. This government can't argue with that. I hear you loud and clear, Papa Nana, and other faithful callers and bloggers and people who send message to the government. I hear you. We are listening. We are a listening government. We are a learning government. But above all, we are a caring and responsive government. We will continue on the path of fiscal responsibility to build a strong and vibrant economy that generates surpluses, and we will use these surpluses to care for the people's needs. The Jamaica Labour Party that I lead does not subscribe to trickle-down economics. I want that to be stated for the record. Stated for the record. At the 2012 conference of the Jamaica Labour Party, it is on YouTube. You can go and just type in Jamaica Labour Party Conference 2012. Go and look it up. I outlined our policy thinking to the Jamaican people. I said then that the Jamaica Labour Party does, and I'm quoting, I hate to quote myself, but in this instant case I have to. I said then that the Jamaica Labour Party does not believe in trickle-down theory, and we do not believe that because there is economic growth, people are automatically going to benefit. That was laid out very clearly as to the policy platform of the Jamaica Labour Party. I declared that as a political organization, we believe in social activism. We put in place policies to ensure that while the economy is growing, the people are benefiting. There are those who talk about putting people first. We are the government that has actually put people first. Madam Speaker, that is why we introduced tuition-free education. And as a result, we are now moving closer to universal secondary education. It was the opposition who tried to remove it when they took government. That is why we...
I'll say that the Prime Minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, the member's time for speaking having been expired, I beg to move that the Prime Minister's time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Members, the question is that the Prime Minister's time be extended to allow for completion of his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, that is why we introduce free access to health care that improve the health-seeking behavior of Jamaicans. That is why we made technical and vocational training free at the Heart Trust NSTA, where now over 120,000 young people are registered since the removal of fees. That is why we have consistently increased the various tax thresholds to free more Jamaicans from taxation. That is why we introduced a social pension for seniors over 75 who are not NIS contributors. That is why we are introducing unemployment insurance. That is why we have removed the guarantors from student loans. That is why we give a subsidy on bus fares to cushion the impact of inflation on commuting public. We use economic gains to implement people-centered policies that care for and protect the most vulnerable among us and ensure that the gains are shared equitably to improve the lives of all Jamaicans. We are deliberate in what we do to help the poor. We are the government that cares for the poor and working class, not just in talk, but in action. Madam Speaker, the second message from the people was that while they see progress, they have been waiting for a long time and want to know when it is going to be their turn. We all know that the pain points which frustrate the poor, garbage collection, bad roads, lack of water, they have existed for decades. They know that my administration is building the economy that provides the resources to address the pain points systematically and simultaneously. Because of our skillful management of the COVID-19 pandemic, some may have forgotten that some of our plans and programs were severely derailed, and the government was forced to redirect its efforts and over $70 billion for pandemic relief, including $40 billion in the CARE program. That is just forgotten in the conversation. I mean, when you hear, the opposite side speak, it's as if COVID didn't happen.
Bring table to Parliament and leave out 2020.
It's amazing.
Take Jamaica for food. Come on, man. Come on. Better than that.
There can be no greater testament to how far Jamaica has come than that we have withstood the worst global health and economic shock in 100 years and recovered stronger than we were before. To the point where today the pandemic is like a distant memory in the minds of Jamaicans. This administration has been the most resilient in Jamaica's history. Nevertheless, we understand that the people want their government to accelerate the speed of project implementation and the effectiveness of program delivery. Yes. In other words, the people want their government to increase its productivity. Yes. Here. And nobody can argue with that. Yeah. We must increase productivity. I have long recognized this, and I started the year with a mantra that Jamaica must focus on the twin path of building peace and increasing productivity to create a virtuous cycle of prosperity. Madam Speaker, despite the setback of the COVID pandemic and the ensuing economic fallout and the lingering inflation as a result, Jamaica is back on track. We are now entering a period of the largest and most sustained public investment in the history of Jamaica. The projected central government capital expenditure in the next 5 years is over $500 billion. A number of projects will be implemented through public-private partnerships, so the overall investment will be over $1 trillion. On highways, local roads, including community roads, bridges, public parks, hospitals, schools, markets, rural and utility water supply, sewage, irrigation, houses, police station, fire station, tax office, courthouses, buses, garbage truck, entertainment zones, stadium and sporting facilities, digital infrastructure and ICT system. My God. Projects that others dreamed of. That is the bad mind, Madam Speaker. That is the bad mind. Projects that others dreamed of. Look, listen, I always say, members, the brain is not all in one end. You can have great ideas. And if you have great ideas, I am a person that respects ideas. What I do, I give credit. But if you have a good idea, don't let it go to waste. Give it to me, let me implement it. I thought about using an analogy, but let me try to see if it works. I am the best baby father for ideas. Madam Speaker, the Andrew Holness led administration will convert those dreams and ideas into reality. And I will outline some of these plans and projects this afternoon. Madam Speaker, over the past few years, the pace of project implementation has been such that we have struggled to spend the capital budget. Can you imagine? Let me repeat that, because I don't think people would understand what we're saying. The pace of public sector implementation has been such that we can't spend quickly, efficiently, the amount that we allocate for capital expenditure. Two things are happening there, Madam Speaker. The first thing is that we have increased rapidly, this administration, we have increased rapidly the capital allocation. Secondly, we assume that the current state of the public sector would automatically adjust to this new pace. That is not the case. Government has to be instrumental in how it engages the public sector to move it to a new level of administration to match the capital expenditure that is coming. So I want to spend a little time here, Madam Speaker. We will not be able to implement all of these projects that we have mentioned at the pace required unless we increase public sector efficiency and productivity. Based on our long-term strategic planning of the economy, we saw on the horizon that low productivity, among other concerns such as shortage of skilled labor, would be a constraining factor for growth. With our existing level of productivity, our growth path can be defined as between 1% and 2% on average. If we were to secure a level of productivity to the point where we are able to spend the full capital budget and implement projects as scheduled, we could move our growth pathway to 3 to 4% conservatively over the next 5 years. This would mean a doubling of the rate of project delivery, which means getting better roads, water, hospitals, buses, garbage collection to the people than we are currently doing at the current rate. We knew that if we are to effectively deal with the productivity issue, we must address wages. Everyone knows that Jamaica has long been trapped in a vicious cycle of low wage, leading to low output, leading to low growth economy, which can only sustain low wages. You see that vicious cycle. Low wage, low output, low growth can only sustain low wages. The constant struggle of public sector workers is to bring their wages into reasonable alignment with market compensation and keep a pace with inflation. In the mid-90s, there was an agreement to move public sector workers to 80% of market. In the early 2000s, the government of the day implemented 2 tranches, that is in 2002, implemented 2 tranches of the salary increase for central government workers, including parliamentarians. 100% increase and another percentage at the time. But then had to suspend further increases and in fact implemented a wage freeze shortly thereafter in 2004. In 2008, the Bruce Golding administration brought teachers up to 80% of market and gave increases to some other sectors of workers. By 2010, a wage freeze had to be in effect. And by 2013, another wage freeze was put into effect, which lasted up to 2015, I believe. None of the attempts at aligning public sector wages to market treated with the entire public sector at once, and none of them were sustainable. In fact, the history of compensation adjustment is that rounds of adjustments were followed by rounds of high inflation, financial crises, and implementation of wage freezes, which ultimately made public sector salaries uncompetitive. That's our history. As I say, I just tell it as it is. I'm giving you the facts. We understand that to build a partnership for increased productivity with public sector workers, our government must make significant allocations to reasonably align their wages to market without creating a fiscal crisis. That's what we have to do. For decades, this was something that every administration would have liked to do. They would have liked to have done it. But they never really had the courage, they never really had the wherewithal and the economic conditions to do it. This administration has finally done it in a comprehensive way. That is not to say that everything is now perfect. No, this is not what we're saying. But when you take on such a massive exercise, you have to be prepared that there will be issues. There will be anomalies that arise affecting certain individuals or certain groups. Now, I understand the frustration that can be generated when sometimes there is miscommunication, misunderstanding, or slow responses between the Ministry of Finance and bargaining groups. This should not, however, take away from this major accomplishment. The workers and the country should know that work to complete the adjustment program and implement the other elements of the compensation review continues. It is a work in progress. And the government is committed to resolving all the anomalies. We're committed. Madam Speaker, I want the country to understand the magnitude of the investment of the government in our public service. The graph now being displayed on the screen shows a total public sector wage bill from 1988-1999 financial year to 2024-2025, the budgeted financial year. You can see the increase in wages. What stands out, Madam Speaker, the graph shows that the wage bill over 22 years, from 1999, 2000 to 2021, 2022, basically followed a trend line, which is the red dotted line. If we now compare the actual amounts paid for 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024, and the budgeted amounts for 2024, 2025, we see that they are significantly higher than the trend line. So what you see there is you can say we're not doing. You can try to twist it and turn it and try to sell it. But the facts are there. The compensation review was carried out over 3 years, 2022, 2023, 2023, 2024, and 2024, 2025. So the full impact of the restructuring is reflected in the budget for 2024, 2025. The total wage bill for 2021, 2022, which was before the restructuring exercise, was $241.75 billion. The total wage bill budgeted for 2024, 2025 is $442.05 billion. That is a significant increase of $200 billion, or 83% in favor of public sector workers. The effect of this is not only the immediate change in remuneration, but the restructured salaries create a larger base for pensions for public sector workers when they retire. The conversation currently going on doesn't take into account the better position that our public sector workers will be with a totally higher level of pension when they retire. Having increased the level of salaries, Madam Speaker, we must protect this new level from high inflation. Having made an adjustment, government policy must protect it. Because ultimately, that is what the public sector workers want. That's what every worker wants. They want their salary to be protected from inflation. It is a difficult balancing act because there are pressures that sometimes are forcing you to do things that could be inflationary. So government have to have, the discretion of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon to manage this. But I want to say to public sector workers, we understand the issues, and we are doing all that we can to ensure that we meet your expectations without creating frustration and disappointment in the future. As I've said, whenever we give increases in the past, almost a year or two later, there is a financial crisis. We have to go back into wage freeze. Let's do it in a sustainable way. That is what we want to do. Let's do it in a sustainable way. So having increased the level of salary, we must now protect this new level of salary from inflation. While our inflation targeting policy is working, the greatest protection against inflation is increased productivity, which translates into greater output, greater growth, greater revenues, which can sustain higher wages, which lead to greater productivity. Every worker, on a personal level, should embrace the virtuous cycle of productivity and see increasing productivity as being in their own best interest to protect the value of their current income and secure future increases. So this is the virtuous cycle that we want to create, and we want a partnership with our public sector workers in creating this virtuous cycle of increasing output, which increases growth, which increases the ability of government revenues to sustain higher wage levels. And higher wage levels generate their own productivity, which again generates more growth, and that virtuous cycle continues. And that is what we are asking all our public sector workers to buy into. It is in your best interest, it is in the country's best interest for us to have this partnership for productivity. I know whenever the issue of productivity is raised, there is a tendency to want to blame or highlight shortcomings of the workers. Indeed, I'd raised the subject before, and somebody called me and said, Prime Minister, I don't want you to touch that subject because it's going to look like you blame the workers. Indeed, that is how the conversation has gone historically in Jamaica. When we talk about productivity, we never really talk about total factor productivity. We always talk about worker productivity. I want to change that, Madam Speaker. I want to shift Jamaica into a new mindset and a new consciousness around productivity. While there are issues, I know that when the Jamaican worker is motivated and the industrial relations atmosphere is copacetic, you will not find a more industrious and committed worker than our Jamaican. Labor, however, is only one factor in the productivity equation. While we want workers to be independently responsible for their productivity, management has an indispensable role in restructuring the work environment to enable workers to give of their best. This is why performance management is such an important part of the compensation restructuring exercise. We must restructure work, re-engineer processes, and introduce systems and technology to empower the worker to be innovative, to work smarter, to measure their output, and we must reward them for their efforts. We want to build a new public sector bureaucracy that can adequately serve the Jamaican people, that can adequately serve the new version of Jamaica that is emerging. A public sector in which the worker can feel that the compensable elements of their job reasonably and dynamically approximate market alignment, and that the value of their compensation will keep pace with inflation. In addition, we want to encourage a new dominant mindset where the public sector worker embraces performance and productivity management systems and sees their efforts as not only the basis for reward, but their contribution to building a growing, prosperous, and fair economy. I want every public sector worker to feel that in doing their job faster and better, it will increase growth and they will share equitably in that growth. Madam Speaker, Jamaica is rapidly building out our rules-based institutions. This has created a complex web of laws, regulations, policies, circulars, and guidelines which can slow down, if not paralyze, the government. You know, Madam Speaker, several years ago, when I used to visit the lunchroom downstairs, a member from that side, who was then a minister, said this very thing to me. I have never forgotten it. I have written it down, and I've used it several times. In effect, these are not my words. These are words that were said to me by a member, a former member, not in the House anymore, a former member on that side. Because there may be the belief that there is some political bias in the public sector. The issues for the public sector are structural. They are structural issues. And when we seek to correct them, you can't go with a political lens. We have to look at the real root causes of the problem, because the problem affects whoever is the government. Because I have heard that side complain as well about the structure of the public service. So we complain about it, but we are the ones with the authority to do something about it. And so if we have the authority, let's use it. And that is what I am doing. You can't quarrel with me that I am not doing anything. You can quarrel about what I'm doing, but you can be sure that something is going to be done. There have been numerous calls from MPs on both sides, from the private sector, from boards and management of MDAs to reform the system and processes. The Minister of Finance and the Public Service outlined some changes to the procurement process, streamlining of the existing public investment appraisal process to increase speed and efficiency while preserving accountability and probity will also be necessary. The tortuous and lengthy process to repair the Troy Bridge makes the case for the urgent need for review and reform. The bridge collapsed in August 2021 during the passage of Tropical Storm Grace. The bridge, which was built in 1869, served residents of Trelawney, Manchester, and St. Elizabeth, including students of the nearby Troy High and Troy Primary School. The bridge represents critical infrastructure for the residents, and there is unanimity that the bridge must be replaced. Under the current public investment management guidelines, however, the project is required to go through a full public investment appraisal process. This is even before we get to procurement. This has resulted in significant delays in implementations. However, today, I can finally announce that a contract has been awarded and work will begin early in this first quarter of the coming financial year. Madam Speaker, this administration is pursuing productivity gains through digital transformation of government services. The National Identification System project has been very integral to building out the underlying public key infrastructure to support secure online services. The NIDS project has supported the rollout of the e-passport, many people didn't know that, and the electronic immigration gates, which are now fully operational at the Sangster International Airport, and has assisted greatly in speeding up passenger flow through those airports. The e-gates are now being tested in the Norman Manley International Airport. The NIDS project made all of that possible. The regulations pursuant to the National Identification and Registration Act are ready and will be taken to Parliament for consideration next month. The Board of the National Identification and Registration Authority, NERA, chaired by the Honourable Custos Conrad Pitkin, is in place to oversee the operations of the National Identification System. So we are well now advanced in implementing NIDS. Madam Speaker, to roll out the National ID, 23 post offices across Jamaica will be renovated and used as NIDS enrollment sites. The procurement process for 8 of these, Montego Bay, Black River, Maypen, Santa Cruz, Falmouth, St. Anne's Bay, and Ocherius, and Mandeville, has been completed and work will begin shortly. The renovated post offices will double as digital service points, which will become dedicated areas for people to receive help and to have access to digital services free of charge. So, what came out of our surveys in the implementation of NIDS is that, there is some fear that people have of the term digital. And a part of it is they don't understand it, they are not native to it. But what we do find, and we saw this during COVID, is that once they get used to it, you can't get them off the phone. Particularly our elderly. once they get accustomed to it, it is something that is fascinating to them, and they use it quite consistently. So, Madam Speaker, the strategy is that we're going to be bringing digital services to the people, and we're going to help them to be able to articulate and maneuver in the digital world. So instead of having the post office being about paper, the post office will now become a digital service center. So you will go and register for this, but you will learn here about the digital world. The NITS project, in conjunction with the Registrar General Department, have digitally scanned and stored 1.4 million civil registration documents. At the end of this exercise, we would have scanned 2.246 million birth, death, marriage, adoption, and deed of poll records, thereby creating a database of documents that would not require physical retrieval and enable several online services. So we are moving the RGD totally online, totally digital with its services. Madam Speaker, a functional Data Protection Act and operational body is a prerequisite for the rollout of the National ID. Last year, significant provisions of the Data Protection Act came into force, including the requirement of data controllers to register. Data controllers are people who have custody and make decisions about the use of people's personal and private information. And they are now, under the law, required to register with the Office of the Information Commissioner. So the Office of the Information Commissioner has launched its official portal through which data controllers can register. We know that the new Data Protection Act requirements are a concern for many businesses, especially medium, small, and micro enterprises. Last year, we granted a further 6 months extension for data controllers to prepare for compliance with the provisions of the Act. We are now actively exploring how we can provide further time, especially for MSMEs. To this end, the Office of the Information Commissioner will be following general international best practices for adopting a strategic approach to the implementation of the Data Protection Act. Upon the end of the grace period in June 2024, the Office of the Information Commissioner will only commence registration with controllers in the following categories: ministries, departments, and agencies of government; high-risk sectors such as financial, health, education, tourism, and ICT services; other businesses that conduct data processing on a large scale or that have a significant risk of prejudice to a large number of data subjects; and data controllers who are required to appoint a data protection officer. The Office of the Information Commissioner will publish the categories of controllers who will be required to be registered at the end of the extension, and persons can liaise with the Office of the Information Commissioner to clarify whether or not they need to register in June. Madam Speaker, we believe this approach balances the rights and interests of the people without placing an unnecessary regulatory burden on small businesses. We are a listening government, and we are doing what we can to address the concerns raised by implementing the Data Protection Act in a strategic and responsible manner. Madam Speaker, I'll turn quickly to security. The multifaceted approach taken by the government, including social transformation initiatives, strategic investments in technology and infrastructure, and legislative changes, is paying dividends with a sharp reduction in major crimes, the country's lowest crime rate in 24 years. Jamaica recorded a 10% reduction in major crimes, murders, shooting, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, and break-ins in 2023 when compared to 2022, and the downward trend has continued in 2024. Notably, the number of active gangs in Jamaica, this is very important, the number of active gangs in Jamaica decreased by approximately 36% in 2023 to an estimated 176 gangs, down from an estimated 276 known gangs in 2018. That is a massive reduction. Former Commissioner of Police, Major General Anderson, can claim meaningful progress and success in the transformation of the JCF, in organizational leadership, structure, doctrine, and culture, infrastructure and technology, and in operational strategy and tactics. We are now beginning to see the positive impact of the transformed JCF as a force for good. Madam Speaker, let me express our appreciation and commendation to Major General Anderson for a career of effective leadership and sterling service to Jamaica's national security. I also welcome Dr. Kevin Blake, our new commissioner, and task him to continue the transformation of the JCF. Madam Speaker, the government continues to invest significantly in the transformation of the JCF. We continue to build out the human resources of the force to keep ahead of attrition and to be commensurate with the law and order challenge through a robust program of recruitment and training of over 2,000 officers, which puts the force almost at its full establishment. That's the first time in a long time. We are procuring an additional 280 cameras to be installed in downtown Kingston under the Jamaica Eye program. That will create a security blanket in that area. We are investing approximately $650 million in the JCF's mobile network and microwave data network to improve its communication infrastructure, increasing island-wide coverage from 67% now to 90% by 2028. We continue to upgrade and renew the JCF's fleet with the procurement of over 1,600 motor vehicles to date. 29 police facilities are slated for renovation this year, with investments amounting to approximately $460 million under the Project Rock initiative, which is aimed at converting all police stations into modern, citizen-friendly workplaces. It has never happened before, you know. We intend to start construction of the St. Catherine Northern Police Station, and we broke ground for the Westmoreland Divisional Headquarters last Friday. These, Madam Speaker, are massive investments. Madam Speaker, there's been a lot of talk about the government's strategy for social intervention. I would say this, Madam Speaker. If an idea works, we will use it. But we are not without our own ideas. And Madam Speaker, we went through a very strategic process of developing zones of special operations. And we have sustained those zones of special operations from 2017. I don't take away from the strategy that was employed by the opposition in their social intervention in crime-torn communities. You know, I actually did admire the citizen security strategy with the community. It's a basic, the community. Help me, Minister Chan. What was it? There's a basic needs. They had the inner city basic services. I thought that was a good strategy. I don't take away from the strategy. And so when we developed the zones of special operations, we did look at what strategies were employed in social intervention. And so many of those strategies are incorporated in the zones of special operations. And in fact, as I go through what the zones of special operations is doing, you will see how the social intervention is working. So, Madam Speaker, the government social intervention programs in communities affected by high crime rates is mainly effected through the Jamaica Social Investment Fund under the zones of special operations. These are designed to be long-term interventions that will focus on the improvement of amenities, infrastructure, and human resource development in designated communities. The physical and social transformation in many of these spaces is evident. I will just mention a few of them. We have rehabilitated just over 17.5 kilometers of roadways and the build-out of water and drainage infrastructure in Mount Salem, Denham Town, Greenwich Town, and August Town at a total cost of over 750 million. So just that alone, look, social intervention is important, but there's not just only one way of doing it. And what we try to do is to take the best elements of policies that have gone before and put them into new policies that can deliver even greater results. 7 primary schools in Denham Town, Greenwich Town, and Mount Salem have been rehabilitated at a cost of $138 million. 2 primary schools are currently being rehabilitated in August Town. 3 primary schools have also benefited from the creation of safe passages, which is important for students to traverse main corridors on their way to and from school. The creation and rehabilitation of 14 parks and green spaces. 289 micro-enterprises provided with critical equipment and tools, business development training, and business registration services. Madam Speaker, this government has probably the best working and consistent model of social intervention. The zones of special operation have yielded success in the reduction of murders in 7 of the designated communities, namely Mount Salem, Denham Town, Greenwich Town, August Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah Mar. These communities collectively recorded a 40% reduction in murders when compared to the pre-Zozo figures. Not to mention reductions in all other major crimes in those areas. And in some communities, the reduction is as low as 20%. So the effect of the zones of special operation is significant. So I want to dispel this falsehood about government social intervention. Now, there is one thing that we have to address, where there is a policy difference between the government and the opposition, and that is the use of influential interventor. The proper term would be violence interrupters, right? Influential persons to interrupt violence. Now, I'm not closing the door on something like the Peace Management Initiative. I think it needs to be properly restructured, properly thought out. It has a place, and we will go back to the drawing board and see how we can bring it in. What we don't want is any legitimization of gang leaders to believe that they can pretend to be peacemakers, and then when they are in another space. So that's the only. So I think, Madam Speaker, if the opposition is strong on the point, we are willing to sit with them to work out how we can address that issue and restructure and reestablish the violence interrupters in a way that absolutely rejects criminals trying to parade as community leaders. Madam Speaker, I want to quickly deal with the environment. The world is facing a triple planetary crisis made up of climate change, that's one element of this triple crisis, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And in our country, mainly plastic pollution. I mean, I don't know if you are as disgusted as I am to drive on our roads or look in our rivers and gullies and to go to even some pristine beaches and see plastic. It is a real challenge. Jamaica is not immune to any element of this crisis. This is why the government has pursued a progressive green agenda. Though our suite of policies and legislative actions have been acknowledged both locally and internationally, we continue to work diligently to ensure that our governance framework is fit for purpose to deal with the environmental and climatic challenges we face while also creating an enabling investment environment. Madam Speaker, planning, which facilitates orderly development, is a critical pillar to sound environmental management. Last year, you will recall that we confirmed the Kingston and St. Andrew Pedro Keys development order. We are actively working to complete the parish development orders for St. Thomas, St. Elizabeth, Hanover, and St. James. I am happy to report the promulgation of the Portmore confirmed development order. I am also happy to report that NEPA has completed the master plans for Constant Spring, Halfway Tree, and Negril. Madam Speaker, I want to say a few words on beach access. Coming to that. I am pleased to report that the beach access and management policy is complete and will be tabled at the next sitting of the House. The policy seeks to ensure Jamaica's beaches are preserved and sustainably managed to present and sustainably managed for present and future generations. And the provision, Madam Speaker, is made for Jamaicans to be able to access their beaches. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to announce that the government will be upgrading a number of beaches across the island for public access. You know, Madam Speaker, I've listened very carefully to the debate around beach access. I've had to do it because the policy falls under the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. And we have spent a lot of time going through the policy because the issues are fundamental. We are dealing with the rights of the people. We are dealing with people's prescriptive rights. We are dealing with property rights. We're dealing with people's right to enjoy their environment. And we have to go through all of them carefully. But one thing must be sure. We must be certain, and we must be unequivocal. Jamaicans are entitled to access their beaches. Absolutely. But one thing we know, Madam Speaker, there is one thing to speak about access. There is another thing, Madam Speaker, to actually do it. Enable access. So we believe everybody must have access, but we go a step further. Madam Speaker, I am happy to announce that the government will be upgrading a number of beaches across the island for public access. The existing Fantasy Beach Park in Privy St. Anne will be developed into a parish beach park, similar to the Harmony Park in Montego Bay. The government will be upgrading another 9 free community beaches this year. Beyond 2024-2025 budget year, we will develop the Boston Beach Park in Portland. and we will do a major beach park in Negril. So others talk about beach access. We actually give people beach that they can access. Yeah. They give you the words, we give you the beach. And we have never sold a beach.
Where is Cornwall Beach?
Madam Speaker, Jamaica is on the front line of the changing climate and shifting weather patterns. We have already seen the impacts of coastal communities with rising sea levels causing erosion, salt water intrusion in our water supply, and deteriorating soil quality. We are particularly vulnerable because 70% of Jamaica's population lives within 5 kilometers of the sea. Coastal assessments and hazard maps have been completed for 8 priority coastal areas. We have already successfully implemented the 1.3 billion Port Royal street revetment that protects 1 kilometer of shoreline and the adjacent economic assets, transport routes, and communities in downtown Kingston. In the coming year, the budget includes funding for revetment at Buff Bay in Portland and shoreline protection at Anato Bay in St. Mary. We are building financial buffers to strengthen our resilience to climate-related shocks. This is why Jamaica has engaged the IMF with the Resilience and Sustainability Fund in addition to an emergency line of credit for climatic shocks. We will also renew the catastrophe bond to guard against catastrophic weather events. Madam Speaker, this is an innovation that Jamaica is championing globally. Other countries are looking at Jamaica as the example of how to plan for shocks and make fiscal buffers and provisions. Madam Speaker, the global community has an established structure for how it makes climate finance available to developing countries. Jamaica continues to call for reform. However, it is using the existing structures to enable access to finance for decarbonization and adaptation. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to report that the our Development Bank of Jamaica has been accredited by the Green Climate Fund as a national direct access entity that allows for application and implementation of large climate projects of over US $250 million. This accreditation is the largest received for any national entity within the Caribbean. Madam Speaker, that the Climate Fund can look at our little Jamaica, our little development bank, and say, you guys have done so well. We can put money with you. That's a big endorsement. As I said earlier, we are not all satisfied with the heavy bureaucratic process. But you know what, Madam Speaker? We have complied with it. We have demonstrated that we have the capacity to comply, and that is the reward for developing that capacity. So yes, it is a torturous process, but once you have developed that capacity, at the end of it, you will get the rewards. Madam Speaker, one of the most, and what it means is that we now need to actually develop the capacity to develop the projects to benefit from the funding. That's the next step now, because the government will develop projects, and I'm sure other entities will develop projects, but these projects have to be at a very high standard. And so we have to develop that capacity now. And I'm sure that we will do it. So you're going to see more expenditure within our economy that is climate related. And that's a good thing. So excellent. Madam Speaker, one of the most significant steps that can be taken to halt the reverse of biodiversity loss, to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, is the protection of both 30% of our terrestrial landmass and territorial waters. The 30 by 30 target was established in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework adopted in December 2022. Jamaica is well poised to complete declarations facilitating legal protection of more than 30% of our landmass by 2025, as we are currently at approximately 25%. This has been made possible by the declaration last year of the Black River and Pedro Keys protected areas, both declared under the NRCA Act. I'm happy to announce that today I will table Jamaica's Omnibus Protected Areas Green Policy Paper. Madam Speaker, and you have them there. Madam Speaker, in the coming fiscal year, we will complete declarations of protection under the NRCA Act for the following 5 areas. Canoe Valley, which borders Manchester and Clarendon, Montpelier in St. James, Long Mountain, St. Andrew, Industry Cove, Hanover, and Bengal, St. Anne. Madam Speaker, all of the areas identified were designated as ecologically sensitive areas during my last presentation in the budget debate. Additionally, your government will declare 23 parcels of Crown land as forest reserves or forest management areas under the Forestry Act in 2024-2025. Madam Speaker, it is also to be noted that we completed our protected areas regulations in this fiscal year, solidifying the framework to be used for management of these areas. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation will collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining to increase the island's network of fish sanctuaries by expanding existing ones and establishing new sanctuaries under the Fisheries Act. We will also pursue amendments for the marine park regulations to simplify the administration of user fees. In response to the increasing challenges posed to the island's natural waterways, the government will commence work on the development of a national wetlands and freshwater policy for Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the issue of pollution is complex. Our economic and social activities generate waste, whether solid, liquid, or air pollutants. Though we cannot dive into each of these today, there are 2 areas where I will highlight some steps being taken to reduce pollution in Jamaica. First, the issue of plastics within our waste stream. Madam Speaker, in 2019 and 2020, Jamaica led the region with the first phases of a ban on specific types of single-use plastics. Jamaica is happy with the progress of the International Negotiating Committee to develop a global plastic treaty. We are, however, working to ensure that when this treaty is finalized, Jamaica is well ahead of its target and requirements. As such, allow me to highlight the suite of measures that will be taken in the coming financial year. Jamaica will complete its national policy on the environmentally sound management of single-use plastics. We will this year begin a separate waste. Sorry, let me repeat this. This year, we will begin the separation of waste, in particular plastic waste, at all government facilities nationally. Jamaica will also enter phase 4 of the ban on some plastic materials on June 1 of this year. This phase will include a ban on the manufacture, import, and distribution of single-use plastic lunchboxes and on personal care products using microplastics. Madam Speaker, invariably, when the issue of a plastic ban is raised, the natural question is, what are we going to do about plastic bottles? Prior to the pandemic, approximately 7% of all plastic bottles were being collected. The percentage has increased significantly to 30%. In 2023, 278 million bottles were collected. 5 years ago, it was only 60 million. We will continue to work with the National Solid Waste Management Authority and recycling partners of Jamaica to ramp up collection for recycling. And later on in the presentation, I will make an announcement about another strategy which we will put in place to truly deal with plastics. Madam Speaker, it is well known that the fines in both the NRCA Act and the Wildlife Protection Act do not function as sufficient deterrent to polluters, and in some cases, rogue developers. This is why your government will be tabling for debate amendments to raise the fines in both pieces of legislation from a 50,000 ceiling under the NRCA Act and a 1.5 million ceiling under the Wildlife Protection Act to a 5 million ceiling in both pieces of legislation for individuals, but $10 million for corporate bodies. That's a substantial increase. Madam Speaker, the relationship between sound environmental management and the health and resilience of our water supply is obvious. So today, I'm happy to table Jamaica's new watershed policy. Madam Speaker, I want to say a few words on Rio Cobre. Yes. Mr. Speaker. I want to say a few words on Rio Cobre. I've given instructions to NEPA to start developing a policy, that would see the banning of any waste or effluent being discharged into the Rio Cobre. No, so Madam Speaker, there are, Mr. Speaker, forgive me. There are some factories and operations which do have authority, permit and permission to discharge. What we're looking for is to prevent any discharge into the Rio Cobre. And it's not something that you could do overnight, because along the banks of the Rio Cobre are many establishments which have been there for years and which have predated many of our legislation. So the process of consultation has started. It is imperative that this be done, Mr. Speaker, because, as I will say later in my presentation, we have put in place a new water treatment facility, and therefore we must protect that body of water. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to turn to education and skills. We can all agree that education is a key enabler of a productive and caring economy. Our growth trajectory is limited by the level of our human resource development. There is no doubt that our education system produces some of the brightest minds, pro-social, pro-growth, emotionally intelligent, and skilled citizens worker. The problem is that the education system is not even and consistent across the society in creating the human resources necessary to enable Jamaica to move to a higher growth trajectory. And the problem is exacerbated by a significant percentage of our best trained human resources migrating to build other economies. It is easy to make the observation that Jamaica has a low-wage economy. The more difficult question is, how do we attract higher-paying jobs? That's the real question. A part of the answer to this question is that we need to increase the level of socio-emotional intelligence throughout our society, and we must increase the level of market-aligned skills our workers possess. If every child leaving primary school was to be certified literate and numerate at the highest level, able to control their behavior, think critically and problem solve, and had a positive attitude towards society and authority, and if those children went on to secondary education and further enhanced those fundamental characteristics with functional skills and competencies in areas that support market demands, if they develop the confidence to be innovative and the freedom of thought to be creative, with a sense of social responsibility and good citizenship, Jamaica would have a different look and feel. And we would be able to attract and sustain higher order industries and jobs on a wider scale. This is why we undertook a review of the education and training system to inform our plans to transform it. The transformation of the education system is underway. An implementation plan has been broken down into 365 recommendations under the Pattison Report in short, medium, and long-term initiatives that span several pillars: governance and accountability, early childhood development, teaching, curriculum, and teacher training, tertiary sector, TVET in Jamaica, infrastructure and technology, and finance. Madam Speaker, I want all stakeholders to appreciate that transformation of the education system is a massive undertaking. The system comprises 1,010 public schools, 2,400 early childhood institutions, 500 prep and private schools, 21 tertiary institutions, 600,000 students, 25,000 teachers, and more. There have been several attempts at transformation over the years with varying degrees of success. We have learned from these past efforts. The comprehensive transformation that we are all seeking is going to take time, and we are proceeding in a structured and sustainable way. The Independent Education Transformation Oversight Committee, which was established to monitor, oversee, and report to the public on the progress of the implementation report, last week reported that of the 101 recommendations that were targeted for implementation to date, 97 of them are on track. Madam Speaker, this administration is very serious about giving our students the opportunity to access higher education and skills as we seek to move from a low-wage economy to a high-productivity economy. In addition to the removal of the guarantor requirement for student loans, the government will make available through the Ministry of Education $200 million to provide tuition support for at least 1,000 students who show that they are in good academic standing with their tertiary institution, but are in need of financial support. See, we care for the people. This support will be administered through the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the CDF, where each constituency will be allocated approximately $3 million, and each beneficiary can get a maximum grant of $200,000. Madam Speaker, I now turn our focus on Heart Trust NSDA. The Heart Trust was conceptualized by the Most Honorable Edward Seaga in 1982 with the mission to reduce unemployment and create a dynamic and skilled labor force in Jamaica. Even though unemployment today is at a record low of 4.2%, the mission remains as relevant today as it was in 1982. Madam Speaker, for the first time in our independent history, we face a new challenge. On the one hand, we have a myriad of business leaders speaking to the shortage of labor in growing sectors of the economy. On the other hand, we have too many persons across the length and breadth of Jamaica who are not sufficiently engaged in meaningful work. For the first time in our independent history, we can say to every Jamaican youth, if you are willing to work and acquire a skill, there is a job for you. When we say every youth is a star, that is not a pipe dream in Jamaica today. It can truly be achieved. The Heart Trust has a pivotal role to play in this. Madam Speaker, we are revitalizing and re-energizing heart, and we are putting the heart back in heart. Madam Speaker, last year I announced the Learning and Investment for Transformation LIFT program designed to provide secondary school leavers with structured assimilation into the workplace. I'm pleased to report that 506 participants from the first cycle of the program have been placed in public and private sector organizations across. They are currently developing on-the-job skills while earning a monthly income of $85,000 with $15,000 reserved as compulsory saving that will be released at the end of year one of job placement. The trainees under the LIFT program come with a fairly high level of secondary level certification, but they lack work experience. The LIFT program is designed to improve their work readiness and prepare them for high-functioning jobs. An important component of the LIFT program is that the enrollees are assisted with social mobility documents. They will get their TRN, their passports, their NIS, and bank accounts will be open for them, and they get their driver's license. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to acknowledge one of our LIFT students in the gallery. As you know, the LIFT participants are taken from all 63 constituencies, and the program was oversubscribed. With us today is Akila Simpson, who is from my constituency. I don't know if any other LIFT student is here. I gather that our LIFT student is from the constituency of the leader of the opposition. We're very grateful. Yes, you would have submitted the bill. Yes, yes. It's very important, and I just depart from my script here just for a minute, because there's usually great criticism when benefits are directed through MPs. I find, however, that when it is done in conjunction with an entity and with the CDF, that the geographic spread of the benefit is much better. I don't want to in any way suggest that MPs can replace the central government in the distribution of welfare, but there are some projects where the MPs have a much better sense of what the need is. And so we have strategically done it in that way. And I find that sometimes the MPs are also very good motivators, because the entities oftentimes need somebody to intervene when there is a problem. So sometimes someone may apply for a benefit, they get the benefit, but then they stop coming. Who do you call to get them to come back? It's usually good when your member of parliament can get in touch and say, no man, I got it. So, Madam Speaker, Akila, I'm certain, is now learning to drive. And she will get her driver's license. The program has been a success, and we are getting ready for another intake under the program. We empower our youth and let them know you can do it. You can do it. Alric is also here from the leader of the opposition's constituency. Alric, I'm sorry, you're also learning to drive. Yes. Very good. No, and so I just wanted to, I want to thank Alric and Akila for coming to the presentation today. Sometimes when we announce these programs, the public listening can't identify with it. They think it's just an announcement, it's not real. But these programs are real. These are real people. So we're very happy that you have come to show the public that, yes, these are real people. When I say 506, there are 506 of Alric and Akila who are here. Madam Speaker, it is important to note that more than 120,000 trainees have enrolled in HART since the removal of fees. Using Statin's October 2023 figures, our labor force stands at 1,377,600 out of a working age population of 14 years or older of 2.1 million. This gives a relatively large labor force participation rate of 65%. It's a very important figure because the labor participation rate is the percentage of the working age, well, the percentage of the labor force relative to the working age population. So 65% of our working age population is in the labor force. The last figures I looked at for a comparative economy like Trinidad was about 60%. The United States, maybe a little bit lower, maybe at about 60, 62, 63%. But our labor participation rate is actually very high and is inching up. Madam Speaker, there are 724,600 persons. And even though these numbers seem fairly precise, the methodology yields these numbers, but they are estimates. So there are 724,600 persons, 14 years and older, who are not in the labor force. Meaning, these are persons who are registered in schools or training institutions, retired and elderly persons, persons taking care of their households and families, and persons who, for other reasons, are not available for work, such as persons who are incarcerated or disabled, and persons who have not made themselves available, who say, I am not going to work. It should be noted that 95.8% of the labor force, or 1.32 million persons, are employed. Think about it. 95.8% of everyone who is able, capable, and seeking a job is in a job. If you look at it from that perspective, you begin to understand the problem that the country faces. If the economy grows and job opportunities open up, where are we going to get the people from? So remember now, we have 724,000 persons outside the labor force. We have 4%, 4.2% who are unemployed, which represents 57,300 persons unemployed. Now, the member from St. Andrew South said, we must never contemplate importation of labor. Yeah, you said that, and I agree with you. I think we should do everything in our power right now to get all our youngsters, everyone who is available. We must get all of them, every one of them. We must get them into our labor force. We have too many of them. Too many. So, Madam Speaker, in any economy, there is always a base level of unemployment due to structural changes in the economy. Businesses go out of operations, particular skills become obsolete, and workers are out of job while they retool, and new businesses come into operation. But there is also frictional unemployment, where the worker voluntarily changes job, and there is a lag between leaving one job and finding another. In addition to ensuring that labor is trained and constantly upskilled in relevant areas aligned to the market demand, in this era of virtual full employment, so that is where we are now. We don't say it, but technically that's where we are. Full employment. Heart must play the leading role in attracting persons into the workforce. As I travel across Jamaica, I come upon many young persons who should be working, who say they want to work. Some say they have certification. Some say they have skills, but they can't find a job. The youth that is 14 to 24, the youth unemployment rate in October 2023 was 12.6%, or 26,000 persons. So if you think about it strategically, if we're going to find new people to put in the labor force, to get into jobs, we already have 26,000 persons that Heart needs to focus on to get them ready, to get them skilled, and to pair them with a job. So strategically, from a policy perspective, what we are going to do, right, is to focus on this area. We must find these young people and not so young people. We must find them where they are, and we must develop programs to increase their employability. So in the short term, yes, we're going to try and really reduce this 26,000, because they are the ones who say they are looking for jobs, but they can't find jobs because they are youthful. Obviously, they may not have skills, and they don't have experience, and they may not have a work-ready attitude. And so we're going to target hard into that area. So this year, the Heart NSTA Trust will introduce the Community Action for Rewarding Engagement initiative called, what does that spell? That's the CARE initiative, to reach every young man and woman who is not working and is not enrolled in a training program. Heart will be proactive in finding you and bringing you to the well of training. If our economy is to grow, we need every able-bodied man and woman who is able and capable of working to join the labor force. The CARE initiative will be activated in all 63 constituencies. Each member of parliament will be asked to identify 30 young persons from their constituency using predetermined selection parameters set by the program. A specialized team in Heart will go to their houses or meet them on the corner if necessary to engage with them and enroll them into the program that will enhance their employability. Madam Madam Speaker, as I travel across Jamaica and I speak to our young people, they tell me that making Hart free of tuition is great, but some of them struggle to find money for transportation and to buy lunch. They say, Prime Minister, I want to come and do the training, but I don't have the bus fare. I want to get a skill, but I won't be able to buy lunch when I go to the training center. This is the dilemma. And this is why we have decided that every student enrolled in HEART under the New Care Initiative will receive a monthly transportation stipend of $15,000 to offset transportation costs to the HEART institutions in which they will be enrolled. The grant will be tied to their attendance, obviously, and we will go even further. All trainees under the CARE program will receive an additional stipend of $13,000 per week for the duration of the training. For some persons who will reach through this program, extensive training may not be required. A lot of them that I have met, they tell me they have certificates. They are a welder, they are this, they are that. But you realize that in speaking to them, what may have been the challenge? Because I tell you, they go to interviews, there might be the challenge of the work ethic, the challenge of the interpersonal skills, the work readiness, and the workplace ethics skills. Those are things that we may have to work on. So the program may not necessarily have to cater to intensive training, but more work readiness skills. And if that is the case, this will also be done quite easily. So this will do job placement, mentorship, and career guidance where necessary. We recognize the urgent nature of the problem of shortage of skilled labor. I would go as far to say that it is now a national emergency. We need to do everything possible, including moral suasion and incentivization, to bring more Jamaicans back into the labor force. In this regard, though HEART must lead the effort, it cannot do it alone. HEART will partner with well-structured and accountable entities on initiatives to attract and train more Jamaicans to the workforce. HEART Trust is currently partnering with Project STAR. Let me repeat that. The HEART Trust is currently partnering with Project STAR, not outsourcing, partnering with Project STAR in 5 communities: Rose Gardens, Parade Gardens in downtown Kingston, Savannah Lamar in Westmoreland, Maypen West in Clarendon, and Salt Spring in St. James, to reach unemployed and unattached youth in these communities. Last year, I announced that HEART will partner with the JDF to add a component to the Jamaica National Service Corps program to leverage the excellent training and character development capabilities of the JDF. This program is still in the planning phase, and we expect to begin rollout later in the coming financial year. The JNC program continues to provide an avenue for Jamaica's youth to access regimented training, serve their country, and earn. Since the start of the program in June 2017, a total of 6,220 persons have been trained, 5,070 males and 1,150 females. To date, 4,259 candidates have transitioned to become full members of the JDF. Other participants in the program have been certified and prepared for the job market, where they are highly sought after by employees in the security and technical fields. Madam Speaker, one critical sector that has signaled their need for additional labor is construction. We have developed an accelerated apprenticeship program in partnership with some construction firms which will involve a 3-month pre-apprenticeship period to develop employability skills, as well as technical competencies, a 7-month immersive training placement on the construction site for 4 days, and in the Heart Institution for 1 day, an on-the-job mentorship phase, and an assessment and certification following 7 months of on-the-job exposure. This creative approach will make the training in construction more aligned to industry needs, and we will be able to put persons to work in a shorter time frame. Madam Speaker, and this is another partnership that we are pursuing. Madam Speaker, this administration believes in economic independence and self-empowerment. Not every young person will be an employee. We need more self-employed. Yes. We need more young entrepreneurs. Having removed tuition fees for all Heart programs up to level 4, this year we're building on that. Starting April 1, 2024, every successful graduate of a level 4 trade program will receive a grant of $50,000 to help them acquire the tools of their trade and to step up to the next stage of their career. For those who are on path or wards of the state, this grant will be increased to $75,000. Additionally, starting next financial year, the Heart NSTA Trust will open a special grant facility of up to $100,000 for Heart certified trainees who have registered a trade or business that has been operating for more than a year. The beneficiaries will also be assisted in refining their business plans, executing marketing activities, further capacity building, and other forms of technical support. Madam Speaker, while we are on the subject of supporting graduate trainees, I would also like to mention that the Development Bank of Jamaica has introduced the trade person opportunity ownership loan. That spells tool. Interesting, the trade person ownership opportunity loan, which will be launched in June 2024. Under the tool program, loans will be offered to small contractors through the DBJ with partnership institutions at an interest rate of 9% for up to 24 months, and will provide up to $500,000 per applicant to assist with acquiring tools or upgrading tools of their trade. So technically, Madam Speaker, a graduate could get 50,000 grant and then go to DBJ and get another loan for 500,000 to buy the tools necessary to start off their business. These grants and technical assistance are a deliberate effort to provide our trainees and small businesses with meaningful support to increase their productivity and grow their businesses. Madam Speaker, this year the Heart Trust will launch the Skills on Demand portal, which will connect skilled professionals with potential employers and clients. If you need a plumber to fix a leak at your house, you will be able to go on the Skills on Demand portal and identify plumbing professionals who have registered and who have been verified as having training and certification from Heart. Skilled professionals will be able to advertise their skills, their previous employers' ratings, and their current location to potential employers and clients. Potential employers and clients will benefit from access to an array of talent that has been verified, and they will have the ability required skills. Madam Speaker, we are a listening government, we are a learning government, and we are a caring and responsive government. We have listened to our young people, we have listened to businesses who are clamoring for trained workers, and we are responding. We believe that by training and upskilling our workforce, we can break the vicious cycle of the low-wage economy. A skilled workforce is an attraction in itself for investments and location of high productivity jobs. Labor will drive growth and create a virtuous cycle of productivity and prosperity. Labor will drive growth and create a virtuous cycle of productivity and prosperity. Madam Speaker, I now turn attention to the build-out of Jamaica's road infrastructure. The vision of a more seamless, connected Jamaica is taking place. The Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project is the largest integrated road infrastructure project ever undertaken in Jamaica. The Harbour View to Yallah's Bridge leg of the highway was officially opened in February of this year. This impressive 17.4 kilometers of roadway has significantly reduced travel between Kingston and St. Thomas from 45 minutes to 15 minutes. If you talk about increasing productivity, that's what it looks like. Along the roadway, there has been the installation of approximately 28 kilometers of water lines, 350 meters of sewer lines, and 17.8 meters of fiber optic ducts, benefiting some 348 properties. The government, Madam Speaker, we get things done. At the completion of the works on the stretch of road leading to Morant Bay, I intend to officially name the highway the Right Excellent Paul Bogle Highway in honor of our national hero who gave his life in the struggle against oppression and injustice in Jamaica. When the chapter of our history is written about St. Thomas, it will show that this administration has done the most for the people of St. Thomas. That we have brought roads, water, jobs, industries, and development to what is now being called the Renaissance Parish. The government is now focused on completing the Yallah's Bridge to Port Antonio and the Morant Bay to Cedar Valley legs of the highway, which will open up the corridor with water, broadband, and sewer lines in some areas. The government, Madam Speaker, is now concentrating efforts on commencing the Port Antonio bypass project in the coming fiscal year. The bypass will unfold in two phases. The phase one, which is from Norwich to Turtle Crawl Harbour, which is 7 kilometers, and phase two from Turtle Crawl Harbour to Boston Bay, 11 kilometers, aligning with the goals of the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project. Currently, the government of Jamaica is exploring phase one, estimated at approximately US $82 million, with a duration of 24 months, aiming to improve access to the growing town and to mitigate against coastal risks. Madam Speaker, the long-awaited Maypen to Williamsfield leg of the highway was opened in September 2023. This 27-kilometer stretch has not only slashed travel times from Maypen to Williamsfield to approximately 15 minutes, but has also ignited interest in development along its path. Private sector interest is growing in developing land along the corridor for housing and agriculture, And we're seeing great opportunities for economic growth. The security forces and the fire brigade have also welcomed this vital artery because it facilitates easier access to communities which were once difficult to police and give services. Moreover, the strengthened link between the Mandeville Regional Hospital and the University Hospital of the West Indies and the KPH in Kingston has reduced transportation times, saving precious lives. Madam Speaker, Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited, which operates the East-West Highway from Caymanas to Maypen under a concession agreement, has a right of first refusal to operate the new Maypen to Williamsfield Highway. The Trans-Jamaica Highway has exercised their right under the concession agreement by making an offer to the government of Jamaica. This offer is being evaluated by independent financial advisors and negotiations are ongoing. In order to facilitate conclusion of these negotiations, the toll period is being extended until July 1, 2024. Madam Speaker, nothing. Madam Speaker, I noted last year that we would be moving further along the Williamsfield, Manchester to Hodges, St. Elizabeth corridor. This extension will also include a northern Mandeville bypass, a spur tree bypass, and I know a lot of people will be happy for that, a spur tree bypass, a Southfield bypass, and a Black River bypass. Value engineering exercises have been performed to reduce the project cost and at the same time increase its functionality. Madam Speaker, the residents of South St. Elizabeth will be part of the stakeholder consultation process to ensure their input is obtained and incorporated from the design stage to project delivery. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to report that the Montego Bay Perimeter Road is progressing steadily and is already 30% complete. As a reminder, the project includes the Montego Bay bypass itself, which will be 15 kilometers. I keep saying bypass, the Montego Bay Perimeter Road, sorry, the Perimeter Road, because you can't really bypass Montego Bay. It's a Perimeter Road. The Long Hill bypass, 11 kilometers, and that is well needed. The current road is treacherous and in a really bad state. The Barnett Street and West Green Avenue road rehabilitation, and a comprehensive drainage study of the Montego Bay area.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I now turn to the North Coast Highway. The North Coast Highway public-private partnership will see the expansion of the North Coast Highway from Sea Castles in St. James to Miami Bay in St. Anne from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. So that area of congestion which currently exists, the government is well advanced in its plans to deal with that area. As part of the due diligence process, a number of studies have been completed, including traffic studies, as well as environmental and social impact studies. The requisite documentation is now being compiled with an aim to launch the tender process in the 4th quarter of this calendar year. Madam Speaker, the old coastal towns of Lucy and Hopewell in Hanover did not benefit from modern urban planning. In fact, they both date back to hundreds of years ago, in a time when horse and buggy was the mode of transportation. Those roads are now a bottleneck. So the Lucy Hopewell bypass will be a 4-lane highway that will start at a grade-separated intersection along the new Long Hill bypass that is currently being constructed. The alignment will then traverse westwards for 30 kilometers with link roads to the main roads before and after the towns of Hopewell and before terminating on the west side of the town of Lucy. Madam Speaker, the KMA is an area of focus for the government. It's the area of largest population, it's the capital, it has the largest traffic flow. In 2024-2025, the government will look at improving the Washington Boulevard corridor, stretching from New Haven to Dunrobin. The NWA has been tasked with developing detailed engineering designs to enhance this corridor. The project scope encompasses not only traffic flow optimization, but also endeavors to elevate visual appeal, recognizing its pivotal role as a gateway into our capital city. Moreover, essential infrastructure installations such as water networks and fiber optic cabling will be facilitated to augment the services that are carried on that road. Madam Speaker, a year or so ago, I had made a commitment that we would upgrade Washington Boulevard. It's as it is now, it is not a good reflection on the entry into Kingston. And it is a very difficult piece of road to navigate. It really does need serious attention. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to report that work has actually started, if only the planning phase, on improving this corridor. Madam Speaker, I know Jamaicans are listening to my presentation with concerns about their community roads. The issue of roads is often a pain point with complaints of dodging potholes and having to replace front ends. Over the past few weeks on the campaign trail, one of the most frequent questions asked was, Prime Minister, what do you do about the road? The point must be made that the deplorable state of our roads has not happened since 2016, and I must repeat that over and over and over. It is the result of decades of neglect and inadequate maintenance even before our independence. Today, there are 22,000 kilometers of roadways in Jamaica, and we estimate that roughly half of them are in a state of disrepair. Many politicians over the years have promised the people to fix their roads. Lest we forget, in 2002, a former Minister of Government promised that Jamaica would be pothole-free by 2003. My administration is not merely promising that we will fix your roads. We are today coming to the people of Jamaica with a multifaceted plan to focus resources on improving the state of local roads over the next 10 years of Jamaica's development. This will be one of the largest investments in roads from our capital expenditure that the country has ever seen. The government's multi-billion-dollar road improvement plan to address the country's road transportation network will be executed through two programs, the Special Capital Expenditure Program and the new Shared Prosperity through Accelerated Improvement to our Road Network, SPARK program. And you can thank the Minister of Finance for that acronym. We have commenced the first